Okay, guys, so on your radicals and proportions review, now we're on to skill 3, and you need to be able to solve a proportion. So let me give you an example of what a proportion is. A proportion is just two fractions or ratios that are set equal. So here's an example of a proportion. And this isn't number 1 from your packet, but this is just an example that we're going to use right now to just review what a proportion is. Okay, so this is saying that x over 2 has to equal 3 over 10. So we want to figure out what the value of x is. Now, in the past, if we wanted to get x by itself, we would multiply both sides by 2. So I'm going to do this problem 2 different ways. I'm going to start by just multiplying both sides by 2. And when I do that, I'm going to get x by itself. And over here, I'm going to get 3 over 10 times 2. Well, multiplying by 2 is really the same as multiplying by 2 over 1. So now I get x equals 6 over 10. But I'm going to need to simplify that. You'll notice I can take a 2 out of the numerator. I can take a 2 out of the denominator. So my final answer to this would be 3/5. Okay? So that's one way that we can solve proportions. But we have a method that works. In this case, it was easy to multiply by 2, but sometimes x is in our denominator. It gets nastier. So here is a method that we use a lot when we're dealing with proportions, and a lot of you already know it. It's called cross-multiplying. So I'm going to show you that method now. Cross-multiplying says we're going to multiply across the diagonal. So I'm going to do x times 10, and that's going to give me the same value as 2 times 6. So 10 times x I can write as 10x. 2 times 3 I can write as 6. To get x by itself, I'm going to divide by 10. And again, just like before, I have to simplify, and we already know that this simplified is 3/5. So cross-multiplying allows us to get to the right answer. So let's see if we can practice cross-multiplying again. Here's another example. Let's do this. Okay. Now in this case, see that x is in the denominator? It's not quite as easy just to divide by 7 to get to x by itself, because I'd still have an x in the denominator. It's a little bit messy. So this is where cross-multiplying is really helpful. So I'm going to do x times 14. And that's going to be the same as 7 times 6. Okay. Here's a recommendation that I have. Don't actually multiply these out yet. I'm going to divide both sides by 14 first. Because now I have x equals 7 times 6 over 14. Number in the numerator and the denominator that have a common factor, or in other words, both 7 and 14 are divisible by 7. So if I divide this by 7, I have 1 left over. If I divide this by 7, I have 2 left over. 1 times 6 is 6, and then I have 2 in the denominator. Well, that was much easier to deal with than 7 times 6, which is 42, all divisible by 14. And then if I simplify this really quickly, I'm going to get that x equals 3. Let's do one more together. One thing I recommend before you cross multiply is if you can simplify the fractions that you're given, let's simplify the fractions first. So notice I have a 2 that I can divide out of the numerator and the denominator. So if I divide by 2, I have x left over. If I divide by 2, I have 3 left over. So I'm just going to rewrite that down here real fast. Both of these are divisible by a lot of different things, but the biggest thing that goes into both of these is 8. And if I divide this by 8, I have 8 left over. If I divide this by 8, I have 1 left over. The more we can simplify at the beginning, the easier it makes the problem at the end. So now I'm going to cross multiply. So I'm going to get x times 1 equals 3 times 8. And now I get a value of 24 for my answer. Okay. Now sometimes your answers will be a fraction. That's totally fine. Sometimes your answers will be a whole number. But if I could recap a couple of things, if you have a proportion, we're going to cross multiply. And when you can, simplify first. I should say when you can. So that should get you guys started. See how you do on skill 3 on your packet.